Morena, everybody. Ko Bevan Morgan, aho. My name's Bevan and I am broadcasting to you from the beautiful Kirikiriroa, Hamilton. So it's lovely to see so many people already in here. Normally we would have Teresa Hall opening our hui, but she's actually not able to make it this morning. Something's come up at the last minute. So you'll have to put up with me opening this hui. Instead, it's a bit of a downgrade, but never mind. So just going to start off with a karakia before I hand over to Susan. So whakataka te hau ki te uru, whakataka te hau ki te tonga, kia mā kina kina ki uta, kia mā taratara ki tai, e hi aki ana te atakura, he tio, he huka, he hauhu, tihei, mauri ora. And so, yeah, Susan, I'll hand it your way.
Thank you, Bevan. So, just the warmest of welcomes to you all. Ka nui te mihi kia koutou. Just so lovely for you all to be able to join us in what is a very intriguing topic for today's session. And honestly, I think we could have had a whole day, but what an amazing set of people we have to share some of their thoughts and passions with us. So we have Abby Moore, who is the CEO of ChipTech, a fellow contemporary. We have Alistair Robertson, who is the founder of the My Life Reminiscence app. Alistair is also a member of our Dementia Leadership and Advisory Group and has a very important role within the International Dementia Alliance and is living with dementia himself. We have Erica Butters, who is the founder of the Volition Supported Decision Making app. We have Jonathan Sibbles, who is the founder of Tiwana, who is a technology provider. We have John Bennett, JB, who is the founder of Guardian Support Services. We have Julie Cordwell, who is the founder of KitCal, an easy-to-use tablet. We have Linda Hogenbaum, who is the founder of Quality Life, who provides access to all sorts of resources for ways to engage people of all abilities. We have Holly Bate-Williams, who is, with a writer and researcher with Ali Care's app. And we have Orchidia Tamio-Motera, who is the president of the New Zealand Society of Diversional and Recreational Therapists. We have Ringi Mahora Riri, who is the CEO of the Rau Awa Awa Kaumatua Charitable Trust. We have Simon Burrows, who is the co-founder of Rendeavour Virtual Reality Experiences. And we have Tracy Hawkes, who is an occupational therapist and dementia mati wari wari educator. And that team is as impressive as it sounds. Absolutely amazing. So what we're going to be doing is taking a bit of a tour around some of the things that are available, that are homegrown, that are being used here, that can make a difference to the lives of people living with dementia. And there are so many things we could focus in on, but we're coming on two themes. So later on in the session, we're going to be focusing in on some of the technologies that can help people with independence. But we're going to be starting off by talking about some of the ways that technology can help people to connect to what matters most for them. So the things that make them feel like themselves. So some of the ways that technology may have been opening up new possibilities for us. And I'm going to be starting off by asking Erica to share with us. Now, Erica is all about supported decision making. She has a wonderful advocate. And Erica, I was just wondering if you can kind of talk us through about why having control over decisions about your own life matters. And what made you think that maybe technology could make this easier on a day-to-day basis?
Yeah, thank you, Susan. So I'm in your introduction to this first segment and how this first segment is about focusing on what matters most. I'm just going to pause and say, Bevan, are you able to just mute the person who's unmuted currently? Just because it will, I think, support everybody to enjoy the sound a little bit better. Thank you. So I love that the introduction is about what matters most, because to me, and I think to everyone, being able to have that sense of autonomy and self-determination over your life is absolutely what matters most. It's core to our sense of well-being. It's core to our sense of personhood and dignity. And when we're able to exercise that autonomy, then we're able to have better relationships with those around us, able to express our own identity, and it helps us to be in the driver's seat and avoid some situations and potential neglect or abuse and not living your good life that may occur if you're otherwise not able to express yourself. And the reason why, so I've been a champion of supported decision making for a long time, and the reason why I've arrived at the strong, adamant belief that technology is critical in supporting us to actually practice supported decision making is because I've seen it be talked about at a principles level for years and years and years. I've seen it be attempted to be practiced on a personal level between family members and the loved one that they're supporting. But it hasn't yet gotten a lot of airtime or traction, which is crazy because when you're thinking about human rights, the right to determine your own life underpins every other human right. And if we don't have that, then all of the other human rights are kind of not really worth anything. So my conclusion, therefore, is that we need to be able to have tools that enable everybody to get started and to practice and to do it imperfectly, but to get started with practicing supported decision making, with practicing expressing preferences and what's important, and practicing acknowledging those preferences. And so that is the premise that Volition is built on. It's a digital preference bank that enables decision makers to explore and capture what's important to them, including how they want to receive support, and then communicate that information with the people and the agencies around them so that they can honor those preferences, which is certainly something that matters most.
That's so cool. So like for me, if I was using Volition, you know, if I started my day with a carer coming in to support me, I might start, you know, Volition might help right from the moment that someone comes in to help me with my breakfast, say.
Absolutely. Volition is designed to be able to document the whole span and breadth of life preferences. So the everyday things like what you're going to have for breakfast and on your toast, but also through to some of those really life-changing and substantial preferences and decisions around advanced care planning and end-of-life care, things that are so important and they need to be documented and shared so that they can be honored.
Yeah. So, and I guess that one of the things that is so helpful is that idea of having somewhere central, because with the best will in the world, we don't always have the same supporters coming in. Things change. You know, my GP retires, and I've got a one place where I don't have to keep training up, you know, different people.
Yeah, absolutely. And that's one of the critical failure points with supported decision making right now, is that often the people that act as a supporter are only sitting in that space for a short amount of time before they move on. There's in the home and community support service, there's in that sector, there's a 36% turnover rate. And so it's almost like a constant parade of new people that might be coming to support you with very intimate things. And Volition very much is aiming to give people back that dignity to be able to say it once and say and acknowledge what's important, and then the app helps to carry the heavy load in communicating it from then on, and also to hold others accountable to having received that information. Now, I also just really want to emphasize that technology and Volition is a tool, but it in no way, shape or form replaces the human connection and the human interaction. We're not trying to remove the need to build relationships in that whakawhanaungatanga, but we're trying to give it a leg up and a head start.
I think that's something that we're probably going to be hearing over and over for the first part of this morning, is that technology is a tool. It's unlike maybe when we think about teenagers who disappear into a room and technology takes them away from the world, that we're about technology being a way to connect and share stories. And it is a tool, like you were saying. That's fantastic. And I know that today is a very special day, so that in terms of supported decision making, bit of a landmark day today.
Absolutely it is. And so I just need to preface by giving my apologies. I'm unable to stay for the entire session today, so I'm going to be anxiously looking to watch the recording later. But the reason why I'm unable to stay is I'm ducking out. I'm sitting here in a room at Whaikaha, the Ministry of Disabled People, because today we are launching a website that is a resource intended to be like the front door in New Zealand for anybody to access and learn about supported decision making across all population groups. And I want to acknowledge that there have been people that are present here today, including Susan and Alistair, that have contributed heavily to the development of this resource. And we're excited to launch it today and hope that the dementia community will absolutely take advantage of it and get stuck in.
Fantastic, and congratulations.
Thanks.
So if people are looking for that website, what should they be looking for?
Yep, so it is found at supportmydecisions.nz. supportmydecisions.nz. The site is called Whaimana, and it has a lot of information at an introductory level, and as well you can drill down and get a little bit more information where you want to about topics, and link to a whole lot of resources nationally and internationally.
Yes. Thank you so much, Erica, and thank you for, honestly, for double dipping for your day. We really appreciate it. Now,
Thank you.
as we're going through the morning for our other speakers, just to say that we really welcome you typing in any questions along the way or comments that you want to pop in the chat, and we'll try to build those in as we work through the session. But any questions we don't get to, we'll be providing a little bit of a pack after the session, and we'll put in the links that people talk about. We'll put in the resources that people talk about, so that we'll be able to share all those, so that you'll have that after the session to keep, so to speak. So thank you so much, Erica. And I think that theme about the idea of helping people have a voice and helping people to put things in one place really fits very much with some of the things that Alistair has been working on with the idea of life story work or reminiscence. And that's something that I know that you're very passionate about, as something that can help us connect with ourselves, Alistair.
Yep, thank you, Susan. And I suppose to start with what we mean by reminiscing. And really, all it is just initiating discussion of past events and experiences. And I suppose with the app, really what I'm looking at is that you can record that digitally rather than in a paper-based system. So why is it important? To me, it provides some prompts. It gives ourselves and others a better understanding of who we are, and that could be through us with family, friends, care providers, also could be with co-workers. So, you know, everyone has a story within. And today, you know, it's rare that these past stories or memories are actually shared, you know, around the dining table or around the fireplace, as was the norm for our previous generations. And so the more memories generally mean a richer time frame of our journey. And so probably one of the outcomes, I mean, this, you know, I could list numerous outcomes from this, but one of them is to reduce loneliness, anxiety, and agitation. And research evidence indicates that when a person has a life storybook, it results in improved quality of life. And it's interesting that, you know, our strongest memories are during the period of our late teens, early 20s. So for me, that was in the late 70s. You know, and if I look back then to the new friends that I developed, new relationships, some of the adventures, employment sort of was when I first started working, travel, fashion trends. So around that time was bell bottoms, paisley shirts, long hair. Believe it or not, Susan, I had long wavy hair down to my shoulders back then. And another one is music. And so I think, you know, whether you enjoy music or not, listening to, there will be some tunes that when you hear them now will take you instantly back to some event or activity. You know, and that sort of stimulates that memory further and makes it stronger. As I say, everyone has a life story to tell, you know, and it's great to try and get that sharing. But also, I mean, it's as far as this recording of your life journey, I mean, it can also be a legacy, and you know, a means of how you want to be remembered by your grandchildren, Mokopuna. You know, what key lessons do you want to share with them, or what key skills that you may have that you want to pass on, and particularly some sort of skills that maybe are dying. You know, are there any family traditions or stories that you want to pass on? So, you know, at the end of the day, I suppose a memory is much more than a collection of dates, events, and people that you've met. It's a tangible way a tangible way for your loved ones to acknowledge and remember you and the impact you've made to their family and the wider community.
I think life story work, it's so special. And one of the things that comes to mind to me is just, you know, I'm thinking about some of the images that I've seen of you and your son together. And that thing that it creating this kind of thing together can be such a special experience for families, can't it? That, you know, I bet there were things that your family was going, Dad, I didn't know you wore bell bottoms. You know, they were learning about you and through this experience as well.
Yeah. I mean, how many times have we been to a funeral and we hear someone get up and then start sharing stories and you've never heard of those stories before? You know, so, you know, one of the things I sort of say, why not share it now? Because at least, you know, you can hear what other people have got to say, and also you get the opportunity to correct them too.
That's gorgeous. Yeah, yeah. And, you know, I know that in the past that we've had family members who have passed away, and we come together as a family and look at photos and we don't know what they are.
Yeah.
We don't know who's in them. We don't know the context for them. And it's such a loss. And you think, you know, why? Why weren't we doing this? Yeah. So, and I guess that one of the things that came to mind when you were talking about how that younger time is so special is that it's often when we have our first things, isn't it? It's our first kiss or our first job or our first car, and they're the things that really stay with us. So
Yep.
that, we go back to those. And then by the time you've had your third car, you're struggling to remember what it was. But your first one, you can remember, everything about. So there is something special about, that time of life often, isn't there, in terms of the memories that stay with
Yep.
us. Yeah. Well, fantastic. And just to let people know that we'll be putting the link in, and I'll pop in a couple of a wee video and a wee free resource about life history work, but that also your app is just available to use, isn't it?
Yep. Yeah. And probably the easiest thing is if you just go onto the website. It gives a little bit of information about the app, and also then from there you can click on and download the app onto your phone, desktop, tablet, whatever.
Oh, thank you so much. And just, congratulations. It's just a wonderful thing, a wonderful resource for people to have, to be able to, move past the sellotape and bits of paper on the kitchen bench, something that can be shared and be there for the person and their family. So it's a very cool thing. And when we're thinking about the idea of reminiscence, I'm going to turn to Simon, who has a particular passion and expertise in virtual reality. And Simon, I was just wondering if you'd like to talk to us about some of the ways that, the virtual reality technology may have opened up new possibilities for reminiscence and supporting people with memories.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Susan. Morena, everybody. It's really, really good to be here. And I think just building on some of the points that Alistair made, really, virtual reality it's an amazing technology, and people on the Hui here may have had a go or seen it in various guises, but it's just, I guess, reiterating that it's a tool to be used amongst the human connection. It's not an isolated technology that we advocate for being used on its own. It's all about prompting conversation. It's all about creating shared social experiences for the positive benefit of, people living with dementia or people, at risk of isolation, for example. And so to kind of give some context of how it works, and maybe with a story, because I find sometimes it's maybe the helpful way to bring it to life. So when I first started working with Rendeavor, which is the virtual reality provider, so I went to visit a residential care home they were working with, actually in the States, and they told me about a carer told me about a gentleman that was living there that had advanced dementia, was very withdrawn, and was at high risk of isolation and the health complications that come with that. And so what they were able to do in terms of connecting with him was to use virtual reality to actually help him visit places from his youth. So actually going back to the neighborhoods where he grew up, and that was really, really positive in terms of prompting that conversation, having more specific memory recall, and then sharing that with Fano and other members of the community. Now, the cool thing that they told me about in particular was that they found out that this particular guy was a Yankees baseball fan, and they only knew that because they had taken him to the places through virtual reality. And then they were able to take him to the middle of Yankee Stadium and give him a really profound experience, which really encouraged that conversation. But the best thing about the story is that they didn't know he was a Yankees baseball fan before that. And so they were able to find other Yankees fans within the community. And then that became the cornerstone of his social life for the rest of his life. They would watch the games together. They would essentially form a Yankees club. And so, for him, that sport connection was particularly meaningful. But with virtual reality, it sort of offers a limitless range of experiences of all different interest areas and passions that can be identified and shared for the sake of positive mental and social health. And there's a lot of evidence as well. Virtual reality is not a new technology now, so there's quite a large academic research body behind it. And fundamentally, the immersive nature of VR, so the fact that you're actually taken into, you're bringing the outside in essentially, has shown to have significant effects, and more so compared to other forms of communication in stimulating memory recall. And I think the really interesting thing about that in particular, and sort of building again on some of the previous speakers, is you can reignite memories that potentially seem locked away through the power of actually taking somebody to that place. And so other residents, carers, and even whānau might not know these memories about a person, and you get these wonderful conversations and increased communication that comes off the back of that, and then subsequent increases in depression scoring and other positive kind of metrics around health. Yeah.
Oh, it's just so fantastic, and I think one of the things that may be different than what we imagine for virtual reality is that when you're working in some of these settings, that different people can be seeing the same thing with the person, so that it can be this shared experience and they can see what the person is responding to, so that it's not a kind of shutting yourself off into your own world. It's actually you're coming into the world together, which is quite different, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. So I think it's a misconception that virtual reality is an isolating technology. I mean, you think about maybe the teenager in their bedroom kind of having their own, world, and trying to get them back into the family and having a chat. I certainly have my own kids, and those type of challenges. But no, very much it's not about that. It's about providing a tool within the recreational therapist toolkit, within the carer's toolkit, to help prompt conversation. And then there's many use cases for VR. So in this field, so it could be for that reason, for encouraging social participation. So we might arrange a group social experience. Let's all go and travel to a different place together and have a great time doing that, and have conversation and reminisce about maybe the times we went to those places. Or it could be more of a one-on-one therapeutic type of use case. So with VR, we often see our partners using it for stress relief. So another quick example, one of our partners in Christchurch told me that they've been using it with a gentleman who's an ex-farmer, and every afternoon he gets routinely upset because he wants to make sure his animals are locked away, having done so his whole life as a farmer. And so through VR, they've been able to film the process of locking the gates on his farm with his family present in the video, and actually provide that comfort to him through a VR experience. And it sort of, in that particular case, negated the need for medication in the evening and provided that calming experience. So that's quite a different, more acute dementia care example. But there's other things too. Pain distraction therapy, is quite well founded in VR now. And also acute things like insomnia care as well can be useful. So there's a lot there, but probably I'll pause there. I'll probably run out of time for you, Susan.
No, that's fantastic. And there's just someone actually put in the same comment that I was going to, that Carolyn has said, that what can be so cool about technology is the way it can be personalized. And in terms of being dementia friendly, that's just such a core, so that it's not a one size fits all. It's that you can be personalizing to the person's life story, to what their needs are, to what their loves are, their joys are, and that's really special.
Yeah, absolutely. And actually, we recently did a pretty significant research study looking at the use of VR with people living with dementia, sort of over 350 participants in the clinical trial, so pretty sizable. And one of the key findings that we found through that research was the more personalized you can make the experience, the more impactful it was on the output, which was essentially improved mental health. And that particularly manifested itself in more conversation and more positive conversation with carers and family members. So
Wow.
personalization is definitely very important.
Yeah, and I think, there's lots of nodding going on from people who have experience in the field, because that message, that personalization makes things work better, it's not just VR. There's not many things we wouldn't say that was true. And we've just got Winifred just saying that she has personal experience on the impact that Endeavour can have on reducing loneliness and stimulating cognition, and how it can make it easier for diversional therapists. So that's so cool. And Chris is just wondering about the provider. So we'd just like to say that again, that you're Endeavour.
Yes.
And that will be providing the link into you when we send out the information after the session. So thank you so much, and such lovely big messages coming through, as well as such an intriguing technology. And I think that I'm going to turn over to Rangi Mohora now, because I think a lot of this kind of idea about the way that we can use technology to really help to strengthen and reinforce and tap into identity, that one of the parts of that can be culture. And with our Kaumata Charitable Trust, you have been doing some very fun and some very cool things that bring together technology and culture.
Tēnā koe. Thank you, Susan. Tēnā te mihi kia koutou. Lovely to be here with you today. Yes, we have. And what I would say is that Rau Awa Awa is quite unique in the sense that we are led and governed by kaumātua. And so it's really hard to go off track, because they pretty much drive the vision, but they also drive the priority for the organisation as well. And of course, dementia is a really important kaupapa. Our very first, even though we identified that the need was growing in the earlier years, it was really Alzheimer's New Zealand that funded our very first community-based dementia program. And so we're always grateful to Catherine and the team and the board for that. And then, of course, Professor Makarena Dudley and Kathy Perry also did some training with our team a few years ago on cognitive stimulation therapy. And so we've been able to kind of improve what we do. But of course, community-based organisations, as many of our age concern and our charitable groups will know, is that you have so much capacity and you have so much resources, and there is really so much demand. And that's so technology, Susan, I see as a real tool to enable what we as human beings can't necessarily get to in terms of capability and capacity. But I loved what Erica said around, technology isn't about replacing whakawhanaungatanga. It's really complementary to that. And very much like what Simon just mentioned recently, is that because virtual reality, we actually trialed not long after COVID. So we brought it into expos in an attempt to try and draw our kaumātua out into new spaces and see if they would be willing to trial it at an expo. It was such a hit, Simon, that we ended up taking it to the kaumātua Olympics. And the challenge was that as teams got to their break and had a chance to trial the virtual reality, they didn't want to move when the bell rang for moving on. So it is such an exciting area and piece of technology to be brought into our older people's space. And so, for us, I guess in terms of the work that we've done, some of the things that I kind of nod to is around personalization. So for our kaumātua and for Māori, is like engagement is so much easier when you see yourself in whatever is presented to you. So if you see Māori design and if you see or you hear te reo in technology, it's just so much more engaging for our older people. And that, much like any ethnicity, I would say, is that you want to form a connection from the very outset if possible. But with Rai Awa Awa, I think in terms of design, because they are our leaders and because they're very much a key part of our operations too, not our board, but another group of kaumata called our Kotahitanga Committee, it means that they're always shaping, I was going to say correcting, but I'll say shaping us as their team, as their workforce, to make sure that we get it as right as we can. But we're not perfect. We do it, we learn, and we try to improve. And that's how we keep moving forward on that particular kaupapa. But yes, Susan, some exciting things often brought about because our kaumata have identified something, they want something done about it. We may not have a lot of resources, but we've got a lot of bright minds and we've got a lot of really intelligent mates like Okiria and that, and like Makarena, like Nairikus. We've got a lot of people in different spaces that we can reach out to, like Lanita and that in Alzheimer's New Zealand, and actually just ask a few questions to help give us a bit of guidance. John Reynolds and Louise Parr Brownlee have been really key for us in helping us, just giving us advice to help us design some cognitive health games. So when we first started, we in the community, we throw around words. So it was like brain training games, and then realize that, actually you need to have a little bit of a evidence base to kind of call things that. So it's we're learning all the time. We're based in the community. We're driven by our kaumata, and they're really clear on what technology needs to look and feel like. And their thoughts are, if it's designed for kaumata, then it should have them as part of the design team, right through to implementation. If it's about kaumata, they're the experts of their own lives. So it's about making sure that their voices are prioritized in whatever it is that you're trying to bring to support them.
Fantastic. That's such a cool message. So we've got that idea about personalization coming through, and that idea about, we use that phrase co-design, but people are experts in their own lives. I love that concept. And another thing that I'm kind of hearing coming through is something that, some of us really, it's quite a subtle thing, but playfulness is not the same as childish, is it?
Absolutely. I think, there has to be room for both. So if you ever attended a kaumata Olympics, you'll see that there's there's no boundaries in that to how our kaumata might interact with different games. So we have a noodle game, and in of itself, it's absolutely harmless. But when you get some competitive older people facing off and from different rohe and iwi, then it's no longer just a simple game, and that it can be actually quite a health hazard. So we're revisiting that particular game. But yeah, so I would say that we've worked on 4 games through the funding from Selwyn Foundation. So we were really privileged to be able to be funded by them to develop these games, and we work through with our kaumata around what sort of things that they might like to do, what's common for them to do. And so there's 4 that have been developed, and that's currently just sitting with the Selwyn Foundation to review before we can just share that with so we'll share it with you, Susan, and feel free to share it out to this lovely community who are all working in the Dementia Mate Wareware space.
Oh, we will be looking forward to that. Now, for you and for Simon, we just have a question that has come through about whether you had any people who, with the virtual reality, it made them feel a little bit motion sick, and if you have any tips about how you can reduce that.
Simon, you're the expert. I'll let you go.
Yeah, no, happy to jump in here. So yeah, there's a couple of things here. So first of all, it's important to know that VR may not be for everybody. So there's an important consideration there in thinking about the person's preferences. There's also important consideration around their medical history. that they need to be borne in mind if you're going to provide an immersive experience with somebody. The research shows that we've done has showed that about 1 in 10 people will feel a level of motion sickness when they experience a VR experience. So that needs to be borne in mind. That said, there are definite things that can be done to make sure that the VR experience is delivered in the right way for the individual. So there's specific protocols that we've kind of authored and have had some great support from people on this call, actually. So thank you to everybody who's been involved in that. But it can be very much a case of selecting the right experience for starters. So if you know that potentially there's a risk of that motion sickness or eye strain, things like that, then you would select an experience which is much more gentle. So it might be just sitting on a calm beach or in a forest or something which is quite static, as opposed to something which is more high movement in its kind of makeup. So you wouldn't go straight for dolphin swimming, for example. So there's things like that. There's also VR can also be projected onto a screen, so you can actually engage people, some people wearing headsets, some on the TV screen, to make it that shared social experience. So there's quite a few sort of tips and tricks to make it as effective as possible for people, but obviously bearing in mind their individual needs. And I can touch more on that if people are interested to learn.
Well,
I think that's, oh, sorry, Susan, I was just going to say that's pretty consistent with what we ended up doing, was providing a seat for people to sit at, having the screens there so that whānau or other kaumātua could see what was happening first, because then for some of them they weren't too sure. So having the screens that they could see what was going on also meant that that kind of stimulated interest, but also gave them a sense of, oh, it's not that scary after all. So it was about just, I guess, finding ways to make it acceptable and just reduce any sort of inhibitions and around what might be happening to people when they put those on. And we limited the time that they spent on there. One, because there was a line of people that wanted to trial it, but two, because it was, we had it for a short period of time, so we limited it as well, just to make sure that everybody got a chance to do it. So that's all I'll say. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And I'm going to bring in Linda now, because I think that Linda will have been nodding with lots of the things that we've been talking about. And that idea about technology as being one of our tools that you can see people light up with. And I know that Simon mentioned that one of the things that technology can be involved in is, for example, that idea of music. And that's just so many different ways that we can bring that in, that technology can help with. And so I wondered if that might be something we could start with, was, that idea of some of the ways that technology and music tie in. I'm hoping that Linda is going to, I know she's there on her phone.
How's that?
There you go. You had my heart rate up there a little bit. I might need some VR relaxation to help with that.
Hey, before I get started, I just want to say just awesome work to everyone that's been presenting before me. And you've covered so much of kind of what I want to say. We overlap so much. It's awesome. So just following on with Susan's question about music, I think that's a passion for me, activities for our older seniors, particularly people living with dementia and the barriers a lot of them face. We need to be working hard to give them the access to these things that they love. Music is a profound piece of all of our lives. I've only met 1 or 2 people in my life that do not feel music. But most people, all of us, have very strong memories related to music, and it's a great way to meet with somebody that has dementia. I think one of the things that I've found and it ties in obviously with what someone was saying earlier about maintaining people's independence. And one of the things I've got is the simple radio, and it's been designed specifically for people with dementia so they can maintain their independence with the music without feeling the agitation of having to actually use some of the modern radios, which have a lot of buttons and switches, and it can be quite hard to manage. So this is an awesome way to give someone access to their music. And what I particularly like about those, or the radio that I have as well, is that as someone's dementia progresses and it might become a bit harder for them to manage, the radio will still be there, and the music player part will still be there, so that caregivers and family can actually access the music that this person loves regularly.
Yeah, because it's a combination, isn't it? It's got a simple on-off button and a volume. That's the only big clear buttons. And then it's got 4 buttons that you can have your favorite radio stations with the labels for them, and you just push the button. But then you also have your own playlist. So you can just push the button and you've got your own music that you love. And I think we just almost take it for granted now, that idea that everyone can have their own playlist in life. But it's actually quite a special concept, isn't it? That we can find out what brings people joy, and it can be personalized to them. It's a really profound thing.
Yeah, because we're all different. Our playlist will be different from one person to the next. If you put heavy metal on, if it was me, I'd be going insane. I don't want to hear that stuff. Give me the sound of music.
And just like Simon was saying, it's also working with people to find out what they like, because just like the VR headsets, some people love being immersed in sound with headphones, but other people hate them.
That's right. And what I love about this as well, and unfortunately I still have seen this in places where I've gone, is that the music that the staff put on, even in someone's room, is obvious. A lot of the times it's the FM channel. It doesn't relate at all to that person. And if that person is at the stage now where they perhaps cannot manage the buttons themselves, then this simple radio really ensures that what is played in front of that person is really speaks to their heart when it comes to music. There won't be any blaring heavy rock channels or something unless they like it.
Yeah, exactly. And there's also some technologies around music that are around creating music, aren't there?
Yes, there's some beautiful equipment out there now that is totally interactive. I think Orchidia will be the one that can actually speak more on that. I know
because you were saying
into that technology as she does.
Because there's a cushion, isn't there, that you can interact with?
the InMu. And again, Orchidia will be able to tell you more about that too. She's a whiz when it comes to all the technology for therapeutic uses. But the InMu is a beautiful device that has been designed to be totally interactive with people. So there's no right or wrong with the music that it makes. And it's a very calming device, but also it can also be a very joyful device. But again, I will leave that to Orchidia to follow through.
Yeah. I love that idea of joy. I was actually reading someone this week who said, we talk such a lot about lifespan, but maybe we should be thinking about joy span.
Yeah.
Expanding out our joy spans. Now, when people are further down the journey, sensory things can become really a special way of connecting and supporting people, can't they? And I know that there's lots of different ways that this may come into play, but I think if we have Tracy here, we have Tracy to model one of the things that you have brought in. So Tracy, would you be able to show people the hug?
I can.
So this is something that came up through a co-design process. Would you like to talk us through this?
And Linda can help
Linda.
as well because we got it from Linda. But ideally, one of the concerns that we've had is on one of the wards that we're working in, we're getting a lot of people that are coming in that are quite distressed, and they are actually at quite a sensory level. So that's the level in which we're needing to try and engage with that person. So, and I'm a big believer about heartbeat. And that can have quite an impact on how people are actually feeling. So the hug has actually been designed with a lot of input from people living with dementia, I understand. It's got a very weird face, but actually most people that have seen it thinks it's really cute. I just thought it was quite sloth-like, but I think maybe it's so it doesn't have a huge amount of detail, so a person doesn't have to feel that they need to know who that person or what that face might represent, or it doesn't have emotions that person needs to regulate other than a beautiful wee smile. Anyway, so it's got little arms that have been weighted, and they do hang around. And whilst I wasn't certain about it, I have to say that everybody that's come into my office and had a snuggle has not wanted to let it go. And wanted to keep it. But Susan and I have also had a bit of a tutu with it. And I don't know whether you can hear this, but I'll try and play you the heartbeat. Can you guys hear that? Don't know where my speaker is here. You can hear that? Yeah. Yeah. And then overlaying that, you can have the individual's music. So don't blame us on the choice of music. We just downloaded something.
Oh, no, can't hear that, funnily, but I love the dance.
Oh, that's good. Okay, that's not that great a music, but for me, definitely the heartbeat is something that I thought was useful. So I guess for me, it's also thinking that I've often used a technique called the hand pump, which just means that when you're walking with a person that's quite distressed, you can hold their hand, and there's a wee gentle movement that you can do in the palm of their hand, and that can actually help to ground that person, but it can be done at the pace of a heart rate. But for me, I'm also thinking about when we don't have the physical resource to actually be constantly with that person, what other options have we got? So I think, again, it's about having those options for individual people. So, and I think that someone mentioned it before, that we don't always have those resources. So it's really nice to have a toolkit of options for individuals. I also think that we've had people on the ward that have got English as a second language, and whilst we've been very lucky to have a lovely diverse group of staff members, it's nice to be able to have music options for those individuals that are relatable to their memory banks, if that makes sense. Yeah. So this wee guy, whilst I was unsure, I have to say she is winning me over.
And one of the things, I guess, with something like hug is that it's quite different. And do you have any sort of tips about how you go about kind of introducing something that might involve technology or might not, that's a bit new with people?
Yeah, sure. And I think a lot of people have mentioned that before. It's entirely on ensuring that we're observing how that person is responding. So first and foremost, I think that I generically, even if it's a weighted modality, a weighted dog, I mean, I do remember we really have to make sure that it's not going to cause trauma. So I had one lady that asked if I would introduce a dog to her mother. And I just checked in to make sure that pets were something that was in her vocab. And she said, oh, no, we have working dogs outside. And I said, I'm not sure that this is going to work, but I'll gently give it a go. And the woman looked at the dog and just went, oh, for God's sake, get that outside. So that wasn't going to work for her. So I think it is just making sure that we're on track. So for something like this chap here, I would generically have it with me. Maybe just sitting it on my knee, see if I can get it within that person's visual field, see what their responses are. If they're more of a sensory person, I might gently just pop it. If I've got their hand, I might just gently put their hand onto it so they can feel how soft it is, look at how they're responding, and then gently see if they want to take that on. And then I think because this has got it's got a lovely detachable sound piece, you could actually do them separately. So you could actually introduce the sound if you're worried about that as a separate entity to hug before you actually introduce them. Yeah.
Lovely, thank you. I think that's again that idea of personalization, that you're going at that person's pace, you're seeing what works for them.
Yeah.
One size never fits all, does it?
No. And I might not be the right person to introduce it. You know, we might have to find someone that the family introduced it that might be more accepting. So it just really depends. But I have to say, he's quite delicious.
Thank you, Tracy. So, Linda, I think that one of the things that, sort of came up when we were talking about some of these things is the idea that giving people a chance to explore. So these are things that people can kind of, explore at all different stages. But that there's not a right or wrong, is there? That people can just interact with things on their own terms.
Absolutely. It has to be that way. Otherwise, people will be put off from even trying. And, it's already been mentioned, play is the sense of play, that doesn't die as we get older. It's there. And play is open. And we just, the way I was taught was looking at it like a dance, and we take our cues from that person with dementia and dance with them, and they're the ones that lead it.
That's
and it's
lovely. Yeah.
It's whatever they want it to be. And often, sometimes I've been surprised with that dance where they lead me, because I'm going, oh, I've never thought of that. That's fantastic. If you see a big smile on their face, or that sense of joy coming from them, then that's all that counts. Because all of those feel-good hormones do wonderful things in our body. It's been proven. And that's what we need. Even if someone can't remember half an hour ago what they did, it doesn't matter. Those hormones are still doing great things in their body. And that's all that counts.
Oh.
So, and comforted, and that's, it was something Tracy mentioned, which I think is one of the most amazing things about this technology, and it taps into what everyone before me's done, which I just love. I've seen it happen in the time that I've been working with people with dementia, when I've used Paro, when I've used robotic animals, now with Hug, is that you can cross some of those boundaries, like cultural boundaries. I saw something beautiful many years ago with an elderly Chinese woman with dementia. I won't go into the whole scene, but it was quite profound to see how this robotic animal crossed that language barrier. She had never learnt English, and now in this secure dementia unit, there wasn't anyone that spoke her language, so there's a barrier for her. But this animal crossed that barrier and gave her the greatest sense of joy. She just came out of herself completely, and she was talking, and all the pain that she had been experiencing, it was all gone.
Fantastic, isn't it? And I think one of the other things, we talked about music, and art can be one of those things, even for people who've never been artists. And I know that we have Emma February Richards up in Wellington has been developing some digital apps that people can just explore and make apps. And we're really looking forward to when those come out into the world. But I know one of the things that you have that we happen to have to use here is a different type of technology. It's not digital technology, but it's another way of just cleverness, isn't it? In terms of you've actually got some reusable art materials, haven't you?
I'm telling you, that's one of the best things that I've ever had. And I just love the aqua paints. I just absolutely love them because they've been designed, and this is the thing we're talking about. If we want people to enjoy activities of any kind, and we've talked about it, it needs to be culturally sensitive. It needs to be something that reaches them at a personal level that they can relate to. When I first started, when I first opened my business, I opened it because all that was available in New Zealand was children's toys.
Yeah.
And apart from not being dignified, the content didn't reach those people at all. It was meaningless. It has to be meaningful. So those aqua paints are awesome. And that is a kind of technology. The ones that we might have used, people might remember magic paints from when they were young. They rubbed off and created a terrible mess, and you couldn't use them again. So technology is advanced with that to the degree now that you can keep reusing them. And if you look after them, I had mine for years, and I was going all over the country illustrating, and those things got used a lot, and they just lasted because they were so well made, and they have all the beautiful themes and pictures appropriate for adults to use.
Oh, thank you so much, Linda. I love the way that you just light up when you are thinking about people and activities. And we have a comment through from Winifred just saying absolutely about the happiness that it doesn't matter if you remember it. And there's a quote I love that says that enjoyment doesn't require memory. Yeah, so thank you so much. And I'm going to turn over to Julie now. And I think, Julie, we've already had lots of themes that, again, you'll be nodding about. And one of those is, the importance of the ways that technology can help us to connect and bring people together. And also the importance of being led by the people who'll be using something. And you are kind of in quite a special example of this because I believe that you started off your journey with technology with your mum.
That's right. Thank you, Susan. Kia ora, everyone. I did. My mum and dad, they've both passed now. My dad had Alzheimer's. My mum had a different dementia. And, it often is the elder daughter who is the conduit between everybody and the parent. And my mother was very frustrated with her iPad, and there were so many barriers building up with that. And we just realized that it was time to pop that down and get the next type of device. And it surprised me amazingly that there was no next device. And we got so frustrated, and actually I got so angry when I realized why there wasn't, that we just decided that we could bring a group of people together who could actually do that and make it and to have it work. And so we started literally with A3 desk blotters, and she would draw out what she wanted on the screens, and we would talk about that, and with her friends and her friends' friends and a whole lot of groups of seniors, aged care, senior citizens, anyone who would give us the time of day to have a look and tell us what they wanted. And that's how we came up with the KitCow device, which is really simple, really straightforward, but gives seniors and specifically people with dementia was where we started. But there's a lot of other cohorts of older people who, for one reason or another, aren't comfortable with standard tech, and they are being cut off from their families because they can't use the tech that their families use. So we've put that back together.
So a couple of the things that, when you were trying out, no passwords, no keyboard.
That's right, Susan. We made a long list of all the barriers to technology, and it was quite daunting, the list. And we found that keyboard use is one of the major barriers. There are still a large group of seniors for whom touchscreen technology came in after they had finished their working careers, and particularly for people who didn't use technology in their careers. And they're still running around using flip phones and driving their families batty, and their families are driving them batty because, there's a gap. So keyboards, because if you make a spelling mistake and you don't know how to fix it, or you actually can't see it because it's too small, all those sorts of things. So we started with this list and we just went through it one by one, crossing them off, figuring out answers. So for instance, we don't have a keyboard on a kit cowl because that is the major barrier. We have a magnetic charging cable because for a lot of people, finding that tiny little gap and getting that tiny little thing in there is another barrier. And the very device size, the sizes of fonts, the color combinations, all of those things, we just worked our way through them until they were as gone as we could make them.
Yeah. And getting feedback, because I think there were some surprises along the way, weren't there?
There were not many, because my mum and her friends were quite adamant about what they wanted and what they didn't want. But there were things such as even the size of the device. I assumed bigger was better. I imagined like an iPad Pro, but that turned out, no, that was too big. They couldn't kind of carry it around. So we've gone with a standard size tablet because that's what they wanted. And it was very much driven by what those people, what they wanted, because they were in charge of it. And I was very aware of the sort of, what some other speakers have spoken about, the idea that it's being led by them, the idea that if you don't do that, then you're really telling them how to do things. And there's a learned helplessness in that, where you go in and you say, have a look at this, do this. And we're saying, no, you've got to be in charge of your own connections.
That's so lovely. And I believe that you're continuing this idea of co-design and now working with some Samoan community groups about.
That's right.
Yeah.
We're at a very exciting point with that. So we've always had the kit cowl tablet, obviously in English and Te Reo, because those are our languages here. And our Samoan cohort have done a co-create project with us, which is now finished. And that's the first sort of user requested language that we've got on kit cowl. And the kit cowl tablet it doesn't have a lot of language on it, because that's another barrier. Often we have people who we've looked beyond the dementia and Alzheimer's cohort into all those other reasons why people don't use technology. And sometimes it's literacy skills that need to be supported. Sometimes it's, there are many reasons. And so one of those things to overcome that barrier is to keep the screens very standard, keep the language on them as it's requested. One of the funny things that happened was we kept coming into this brick wall with our young designers and the coders, assuming that we knew what a whole lot of things meant, because they know what it means, but you don't have the same technology and the same requirements for use when you're 15 and when you're 40. So why would you think that there would be from somebody who's 55 and 80? What you're going to use it for is different. What you want it from it is different. And there's so much assumed knowledge built into standard tech that we just had to work our way through it.
That's really bringing home those kind of messages about designing with and personalization. And I'm just going to ask just a little last question because people might be intrigued about the name. KitCal stands for?
Keep in touch calendar. And
Excellent.
that was a long thing in itself, because I would say to some of my reallys, do you want to try out this tablet? And one of them said, no, I take a lot of tablets for my heart. I don't want to try any more tablets. So even the language of what we were going to call it. So we needed a name for itself. So keep in touch calendar. The calendar part was really integral and one of the main things that my mum needed.
Oh, thank you so much. And I'm going to turn to Orchidia now. And Orchidia, obviously, we have so many things to talk about. But one of the things that has come through from Carolyn is just talking about some of the ethics and the guidelines around technology in terms of the design. A couple of things that I'm aware of, there'll be many more that we will put in the links, is that there's a UK Technology and Dementia Charter. So we'll put in a link to that. And the folks who developed HUG have also got a resource available on what they call compassionate design, with some of the principles that across, they've got about 50 different articles. They're an amazing team that they've come to in terms of principles to guide design. But Orchidia, in terms of that kind of idea about some of the things to bear in mind about, in terms of things like transparency, about openness, those kind of things, would that be something that we could start off by just checking in, that kind of when technology might be appropriate, how we might want to use it, some things to bear in mind?
Yes, definitely. Kia ora, everyone, and thank you for the invitation. It's just wonderful to be part of this. I believe, Susan, that we all agree in supporting people living with dementia, in preserving the mana and the dignity and autonomy and agency and all those good things, the overall well-being. But it is important that we adapt to the changing cognitive abilities. It's not just about, I do like that piece of technology. I think it's going to be great, and this is going to help such and such person. And I have learned that myself. And this is why I can share this openly with everyone. Because sometimes whatever we think, we believe might work for someone, it's way more than that. In technology, what I have learned in the time that I have used it, and I do love technology, we have to do it in a certain order, I think, or this is what I have learned, in order to introduce technology in a way that is meaningful for coma to an older person or a person living with a dementia. Number one, we need to get to know the person. We can't just make assumptions. We need to understand who the person is. And I'm not talking only about the life story, but it might be the cultural background, their personality, their intrinsic motivations. Number two, we need to build trust. And it's not only with the person. I mean, it's the most important piece of work to build that trust, but it's also with the funnel, the people that are the significant people for that person. I believe that we need to support. We just not, sometimes we focus so much on the delivery of care and we forget about the support, the delivery, the supporting the person. And I know that we hear a lot about dementia friendly, and believe me, I am a strong advocate about dementia friendly, but we actually need to be talking about being dementia inclusive. And when we talk about technology, this is super important. We have to foster spaces where it is actually the person that is leading the experience. What is it that they want? What is it that they need? And if we understand what is it that they need, and they are actually the people leading the experience, then we have the ability to personalize those experiences. When we talk about ethical considerations, and I do love the fact that Caroline has popped that into the chat, because we are not really digging deep into that. We are making decisions depending sometimes on what is available out there in the market. And it's okay. I mean, some pieces of technology are amazing. And like I said, I love all of them. For example, the hug, I love it. Why do I love that? Because I was born in Mexico. That's part of my culture. I'm a hugger. If I am to develop dementia, if I am to live in a care home in New Zealand, I'm gonna be seeking people to hug me. And maybe I'm going to be, people might be thinking that I am sexually harassing them, but in fact, it's not that. Is that that's part of my upbringing, that's part of who I am. So if you know me and you have built trust, you know that what I need is a hug. And it might not be, the piece of technology, but it might be just someone giving me a hug. And I also would like to stress that technology is never going to replace human touch. Never. Whatever we say with AI and all the beautiful things that are happening, I would rather to hug my mother a thousand times than to hug a hug, right? But I think technology, we also have to keep in mind that it's not for everyone, okay? Technology needs to be mindful. So we need to consider, yes, personality, values, ethics, upbringing. And when we are introducing technology, we say, okay, so we're going to be using the in-use. It's not just about buying the in-use and having them. You need to have some guidelines. You need to train people on how to use them. You need to identify, you need to ask on whether that actually is going to be appropriate for the person. We need to be enthusiastic about the piece of technology, because in my experience, I have got technology that I am enthusiastic about. But the people that are going to be actually introducing the technology that I believe are going to be enhancing the well-being of people, they might not have the same level of passion that I have. And if they don't have it, there's a small chance that it's not going to work. Not because the technology doesn't work. It's because if you understand how this can make a huge difference in the life of people, and if you take the time to understand, if you take the time to learn how to use it, then it can be sustainable. Then you can make a breakthrough. So I think we have to learn how to use technology. So when people see that we are confident, when people see that we're happy using it, it's that energy that gets contagious. When you smile, then someone smiles at you, right? And I think that it's about, yes, creating those joyful moments, but it's understanding why we need to create those joyful moments. Like you were talking earlier, that joy of expansion, 100%. For me, recreation is a human right, and we forget about that. So I think there's a lot that we can talk about, but in my experience, in the time that I have been using technology, at least for the last 15 years, I love it. I have made a lot of mistakes, but what I have learned is I need to get to know the person. There is a lot of variables that we need to take into account. We need to build trust. We need to co-design. We can't just make a decision. We have to find out, is this actually a need or is this actually a want? How can we introduce this in a way that is going to be sustainable? How can I be enthusiastic about this so that everyone that is going to be introducing this technology is going to be equally enthusiastic about it? And there is, we have AI today, and it's amazing. I love it. We have, I put some links. I pop some links on the chat for everyone to have a look at. Playlists that you can design, but also one of the barriers of technology sometimes is the cost, because we also have to be honest about it. It depends on how much something will cost for people to be able to access it. It's not that they don't want to, I have seen a lot of families that they would love to have a lot of pieces of technology, but the cost might be a barrier. So we also need to look at what can be out there, so that they can continue to support their loved ones in a way that is meaningful to them.
Oh, thank you for just drawing it all in together. And, you know, as I sort of saying to Simon, there are things that they just underpin everything. And that message about we start off by knowing the person it's so true in everything we do. And thank you for bringing us back to that. So we have got lots of people sharing in the comments, and just to reassure people that we will be sharing the links that are coming up in the comments with you. So what we're going to do now is kind of shift our attention a little bit in terms of another area that there's a lot of passionate people and innovation going on, and that's looking at ways that technology can help answer some of the questions around that families and carers may have about whether someone is safe, and what if I'm not there and something happens. And our response sometimes can be to try to limit people to keep them safe. And sometimes technology may give us some other options rather than trying to take things away from people to keep them safe. So I'm going to start off with Holly. And Holly, I was just wondering if you can kind of just start us off with some of the things that when we're saying about supporting independence, you know, what does that kind of mean in a day-to-day practical sense?
Thank you so much, Susan. It's great to be alongside such passionate speakers. Just a bit about me. I'm working with Angela Edwards at Ellie Cares, which is an app that really is designed to support seniors and also people living with early to mid-stage dementia, maintain their independence and live well independently. But of course, what does independence really mean? Because it's used so abstractly in so many different ways. So I guess in many ways, independence, you could say, could be defined in many ways as living in a way that's kind of true to what you want to be and who we are, whilst also knowing that we have those support systems, accessible to us. So we don't have to rely on them every day, perhaps, or, intensively rely on them for every day, every action, every decision, but we know that they're in place and that there are people with an easy reach to help us if things do go wrong, or if we just need that bit of support to continue living as we want to live. So I think also it's important to understand when it comes to people living with dementia that they do face some common challenges for independent living, and these commonly fall into different categories. So the first one, of course, that commonly arises is health challenges. So there might be mobility issues, hearing issues, and also memory is quite a big one that comes up, along with things like distress and feeling a bit agitated. And that's where we find that a sense of routines can really help. So putting those anchors throughout the day that really have those sort of touch points that people can connect to, just really add that peace of mind, both for families and for people living with dementia. So they know that they have that sort of structure to follow, whilst also giving a bit of space and time for those moments where they might want to try a new activity. And as we've mentioned just previously, that having those moments to really make space for joyful activities is important. And for family to visit, even if they haven't necessarily planned ahead, is also something we want to really prioritize, because at the end of the day, those emotional connections are the things we remember forever. Another thing that I'll touch on is that, in essence, safety is quite a challenging issue, because in many ways we come across the situation where families often want to know that their loved one is safe as possible. It gives them peace of mind and reassurance to know that their loved one's being looked after, whereas their loved one themselves, whether they're a senior or someone with dementia, might put more priority on their independence, their right to actually make decisions for themselves and feel that empowerment of having control over their day deciding what they want to do and how they do it. So it's a common kind of tension, like whose needs we prioritize here. And often it's something that does change as dementia progresses. So in the early to mid phases, we might, allow people with dementia to really choose, and also plan ahead is, really important. Decide how they want to live their life and what that looks like. So building, things like emergency care plans can also really help with for families as well who are, going through that challenging journey. Another aspect that we see in early cares is other challenges to do with safety, like wandering. So there's great technology out there that actually gives families peace of mind from afar. If their loved one goes outside a certain boundary, like a certain location around their house, their family can check in with them and make sure that they're not lost, and even, check in with them through video, or, give them a call, or send even a neighbor to go and find them and help them back home. And even, as we've mentioned also, just the idea of technology being it's a great tool, but you've also really got to understand the individual who's at the heart, of every situation, because especially today, there's lots of families who are apart. You might not necessarily be on the same street as, an older loved one or someone living with dementia. You might be in a different city or a different country, which also brings in the, whole challenge of time zones. So it's looking for ways of technology can really connect you, so you can check in from afar, while also giving your loved one that sense of, privacy in many cases, that sense of having control over how they want to live their life.
Cool, thank you so much. And lots of things in there. And I think in terms of some practical things, for example, that I know that Ellie Cares has responded to, which is it's a mobile phone app, isn't it? That one of them is around that idea of location. So that it's not that there's a restriction, but that if people go beyond what's normal for them and they set that themselves, that your app can just give a little message to check in. Would you like us to, are you okay? Would you like us to direct you back home? Would you like us to ring your contact person? So, and it comes to the person. It's not just, we alert someone else. It's like, comes to the person first, doesn't it?
Yes, absolutely. Yeah. So with the app, you can, every user, whether you're a caregiver, a family member, or, an individual with dementia yourself, you can create a trusted care team. So that might include family members, trusted friends, and those people can receive alerts, if you run into an issue, if you forget, for example, like an important dose of medication as well, they'll get an alert so that it can check in with you and make sure, that you're okay and everything's all right. And also in terms of location monitoring, it's often a kind of contentious subject sometimes, just because, there are other location devices, that of course can track people's GPS locations wherever they are. But these can sometimes be bulky devices, wristwatches that someone living with dementia might not want to wear because they feel, restrictive. It's also that sense of feeling like you're being monitored all the time. It's just, it can be a bit disconcerting for some people. So at least with the Ellie Cares app, it sort of only pings you, right? If you go outside a boundary, that would signal that something's a bit off, that something might be wrong. And it gives people those, touch points that they connect in and check everything.
Thank you very much, Ellie. Now I'm going to turn over to John, JB, because I know that for many families there is this transition where phones were working great and now phones have got a bit complicated. People might not take them with them, and what to do next. And I remember talking to a gentleman and his wife. She had her own life, she had her own friends, but what she didn't have so much now was spatial skills. And what they came up with was that every morning they actually safety pinned one of the ear tags that you use to hold your keys onto her bra. And so that they'd be able to know that, if she did get lost. And he said, I'm sure there's a better way. And John, I think, I know that you've come into the area of technology from your experience as a carer. And I'm just wondering if you'd like to sort of, talk us through, your light bulb moments where you were going, in terms of this thing of, enabling people to move, to be around, that we heard about from Sharon Crichton when she was doing our safer walking with us in an earlier hui. That, there must be a better way. And what was it that was going on for you?
Yeah, thank you. You're 100% right. And Holly, you brought up a really good point. There's no one device really that meets every need, and the needs change. So it might meet a need early on in the journey, but as time goes on, the need changes. So that technology, or that set of technology that people start out with, that's going to change. So my experience was with my wife, who was diagnosed with Alzheimer's. We knew she had something wrong at about 58, but she was diagnosed at around about 60. And many will relate to this story because it's such a hard thing to diagnose and figure out what's going on. So I looked after her for 5 years at home as a full-time carer, and the service that that came out of that was through my experience with the things that Nikki needed through that time. And I struggled to find things that, like many, the diagnosis sort of sends you into a bit of a spin, a bit of almost a crisis. But so you've got so many things to think about. People are telling you one thing and another. So I was working full time at that stage, and I needed things for myself to know that Nikki was all right. And so the tools that that Guardian Support Services came up with were out of that need. And really, we work with families, like Holly was saying, there's a lot of children who are remote from their parents, and their parents, they're still very independent and quite capable of making their own decisions, but for the peace of mind for the children and the family, it comes by staying connected somehow, and that that is through tech. You either go to the place and be with them as much as you can, which a lot of people do, or if they're not able, there has to be some way of staying connected. So the devices that I came up with for Nikki, they helped us do that. And I guess in that sense, it's not totally co-designed, because we didn't develop the tools in-house. We found them on the market, and so we came up with a watch. And Holly's right. A watch doesn't suit everybody, and there's many reasons why a watch won't. Some people won't accept a watch, and some of those reasons are that particularly guys, they might have had a watch for 40 years, and that's the watch they use, and they know that watch, and it's not just a watch, it's a part of them. So that in that case, a wearable watch that does all the things, helps stay connected and checks on the location and geofencing, and they can all, there's a number of devices out there that can do that. It's not going to work, because they just won't accept it. And the size of the watch, the weight, and all of those things. So, so in that case, you might choose a pendant. So, and even then, a pendant might not work, because some people, they don't want to look different. They don't want to go out into the public wearing a pendant, because it makes them different. And really, they're not. You know, it's the label dementia is a very challenging label. It's challenging for me, and it's challenging for the person with it. You know, I think I prefer cognitive decline or something like that, you know, because we all have dementia at some, you know, to some degree at some point in our life. But, you know, we don't want to be labeled with that. So all of those challenges to enable somebody to, or families to live independently, for whānau to stay connected, they are challenges. You know, they're difficult. They're difficult things, you know, tools to integrate into somebody's life. And you know, I was going to show you what we do, but or the products we do, but I won't actually, because, you know, if you want to know more, you can jump onto our website and have a look. So, but we do work with families. You know, that's why I call it a service more than a, you know, a retail store. So we work with families to find the right solution. We give them, you know, time with the products to decide whether it's going to work for them. So, you know, we don't charge a fee for the first month until we know that we've got the right thing for the person. And so we work quite closely, and we stay connected right throughout the process. So we don't have any contracts or anything like that. So if somebody, you know, if they don't get through the trial, then oh well, that's just the way it is. You know, people have to have a tool that's going to work for them. You know,
And I love the way that you're talking about this as a conversation that involves the person at the center of it. So it's not kind of this covert, you know, spy technology, is it? It's about working with the person, about what they feel comfortable with, that fits with, you know, what their preferences, and that this is something that they can see as of benefit.
Yeah, no, that is right. There's always the balancing act, you know. There's, you know, how do you keep somebody independent and safe? You know, how do you do that? Because at a certain point in the process, independence is potentially going to be lost because they're not safe, you know, because they fall into a category that needs more support, and that it always, unless you're looking after themselves like I did, you know, it always means that somebody else is going to be in control of their lives. You know, they're going to stop them from going out. They're going to lock the doors at night and things like that. So at a point, so yeah, it's really difficult. It's really difficult when you're working with families to find that balance, because it's not it's a process, you know. There's nothing firm about it. It's a fluid. So everyone's different, you know.
Yeah.
You can give somebody a pendant and a medical alarm, but are they going to push it? You know, are they ever going to push it? Why are they spending money on it? If that's, you know, all of those things are, yeah.
Thank you.
Does it answer? Does that help?
That's such, you're bringing up such a big issue. And actually, I'm going to bring in Tracy at this stage, because I think that idea about risk taking, it's a really important concept, and it is it's a very complex and emotional thing to work through for families. And Tracy, you know, risk is something that you're thinking about all the time in your work, isn't it?
Yep. So in my role as both occupational therapist and dementia educator, we often get the scenarios where people are wanting to live their life in the environment of choice, and for where I tend to be involved, it is within the community, which is great. And there are some key kind of areas that I think trigger people's concerns and maybe place a person at risk. And they tend to be around cooking, leaving an environment and potentially getting lost or injured, and often around your medication kind of stuff as well. So I guess it is that real balance. John, you kind of nailed it. It's about balance. And I guess when I think about independence, I don't think that independence means the whole of a task or an activity. It might be around what is the part that that person can actually engage with. And I guess I'll give an example of we had, and it's a very common one, where we had a couple that were living at home, both had cognitive impairment. He was the cook, but unfortunately had been setting the pots on fire. And so there was that risk of smoke and fire and burning. They also weren't reacting. So when there was smoke in the house, which placed them at perceived risk, the people weren't responding to that and getting up and leaving. So there was this real worry from everybody that was wrapped around them. They did choose that they wanted to remain in the home, which was great. So we had a couple of options, and obviously the first one is, people think about, we'll remove that whole activity from that person. So we'll disconnect the stove, or in fact remove the stove so that it's actually not there. But what we did was we broke it down to what were the things that he generically cooked. So there were only 2 things that he genuinely cooked. We looked at the time frame in which it would take for them to be able to cook those items, and they were both around the 15-20 minute time frame. So then we looked at, and this is where it comes into technology, what was around that could maybe put a timer onto the stove that enabled him to be able to do the cooking part of it, but didn't allow, if he was to walk away and get distracted, that this thing wasn't just going to be constantly left on the stove and then placing them at risk. So that's when I didn't really know what to do. So I Googled a couple of electricians and I spoke to some electricians, and it was really cool because they were really invested in coming up with a potential option that may be of use. And it was about, I think John also mentioned that it's fluid. This kind of game is fluid. So we looked at the fact that there could be installed a basic push button that gave, and we could adjust the time as to how long the stove would be accessible for that person. If they wandered off, it would click off, and that would be the risk of it burning was actually, but we could also reduce the time if required, all of those kind of things. So for us, it was a solution. I don't know that the family took it up because it was down to them and the family. We were just there to try and provide solutions. So I don't know if they took it up, but I guess it's that concept of we don't necessarily know what's out there, and it's about exploring options. But I guess first identifying what is the component of the actual issue, and then we can move on from that point as well.
Thank you so much. So Evie, if we turn over to you, does that sound a very familiar list that Tracy was talking about? What are some of the key things that individuals and families come to you, to get some technology to help with?
Yeah, so I think it's a really interesting conversation as a whole around independence and about keeping people connected at home and safe at home at the same time. And I think there's a real balance there between what individuals need in their homes and family and carers needing that reassurance as well. So there's kind of 2 sides to that piece of the puzzle there. I would say that, technology is only part of the solution. It can help, but it's not a cover-all, and it is something that, we design and manufacture here in Christchurch and really create things to help solve people's needs for independence in the community. But what I've found over the years is we recently started providing solutions into the UK market, and the wraparound care that's offered there is quite different to what's actually been available in New Zealand in the past. And we've learnt a lot about what can actually be included for individuals depending on their level of needs and depending on what they require, to keep them safe and to keep them comfortable at home, and to add to a system over time to create a bit of an ecosystem of technology that can really support them. So Our products are known in New Zealand. We supply monitoring centres like Hatohone St John, ADT, Chubb Vital Call and Freedom Medical Alarms with medical alarms, and people know our products as the base unit and the pendant that sit in the home. We also have a mobile pendant that has a wandering detection on it, so we have that GPS side of things now. But in the UK, we sell a huge amount of peripherals around smoke and heat detectors to alert and to have that monitoring side wrapped around them for people who are cooking and forgetting that they've left things on the stove. We have a PIR that's linked to a daily check function. So you're looking for someone to be up in the morning and about.
PIR? Sorry,
Passive infrared sensor. It's just a sensor that just gets installed in the home. And so you're just looking for whether someone's up and about and actually got up for the day and coping okay. So those kind of products. We have door contacts, so you can alert family and carers if someone's actually exiting the house. So you can locally provide an alert for that, so they don't have to be worried about them leaving at night time and having those sleepless nights going, what's going on, what's happening. We link to medication dispensers, so automated dispensers, so we can monitor when people are actually taking their doses and provide wraparound support for that as well. So huge amount of technology that can be put in to someone's home depending on where their need sits. And so it really comes down to that, understanding the individual and the things that they're struggling with, understanding the carers that are looking after them and the things that they could use to support them in doing that as well, and what can help on that side of things. And then, really just looking at what's the best for that person at that point in time, and then reassessing it again as things progress and as things change. Yeah.
Such an important point, that one about it's a process. It's not a one-off, isn't it? It's not that you put something in and well, that's done. We're always needing to check back in. Things will change. People's responses may change.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I think, when we look at independence as a whole, I really believe that, the products that we put in place that are personal help buttons or ones that are automatically alerting when things are changing, that helps people to be independent for longer. And the reason is you get help when you need it. And it's a backup system for situations where things might not be going to plan. And if you look at the adverse impacts of people being left for long periods of time without help in those situations, a long lie, those kind of scenarios, you're going into hospital, you're going into care after that, and it really changes the trajectory of their lives very quickly if they don't get that immediate support. So I see that as being the real value of technology in maintaining people's independence as well. It helps them to get back into their own homes faster, it keeps them there for longer, and it really gives their carers and their whānau around them that confidence that they're actually being managed okay. And when things change, that should change as well. So I just think it's a whole complex web of things you have to navigate, but I don't think that it's not insurmountable, and there's a lot of products out there and a lot of solutions out there that can be added together to build a really nice package around someone to really support them.
No, thank you so much. And last but definitely not least, I'm going to turn over to you, Jonathan. And I know that people have been talking about so many things that are close to your heart, but one of the aspects that I just wanted to talk with you about is that we've sort of been talking about these technologies in a long-term sense, but technologies also can be another tool in our kit when we're thinking about working out what's going on. And I was just thinking about, an example that might be familiar in some form to some of the people in the audience is, for example, that we have someone who's shifted into their new unit, and during the day they have people coming in during the day to provide help, but they're on their own at night. And one evening, 3 o'clock in the morning, there's a knock on the door of a neighbour, and it's our person who's just got confused how to get back to their unit. And the support that is around her go into this kind of panic stations, because it's like, is this the only time that she's done this, or is this the only time that we've known that she's been you know, going out from the unit at night, that she's been getting lost. And this is something that, from, you know, your perspective, that technology can be a really useful thing in our kit to try to work out, rather than going straight into, you know, oh my gosh, they need a higher level of care, you know, they're not safe. Do you want to kind of talk us through some of that potential?
Yeah, sure. So, hi everyone. Thanks for letting me be here today. It's been a brilliant session. So I was nearly crying when JB was talking before. It was amazing. So in the sense of there's lots of solutions out there in terms of being able to sort of potentially continuously monitor people and get a picture of how they're doing, what their well-being is like. I've been involved in a couple of developments of solutions in New Zealand with a company called Bshore. I brought in technology from the UK in a system called Just Checking. I've also got a system.
Could you just say that last one again? We just had a wee bit of a glitch, at least on mine.
Just checking.
Just checking. Thank you.
And I've even got a system in my mum's house linked to an app on my phone called Alcove. So, and she's in the UK, so I can actually see my mum moving around her house in real time, and get alerts if she's not gone to bed or not got up. Generally, it's because she's watching the football and fallen asleep on the TV in the lounge. So there's lots of sensors and solutions out there that can actually draw a picture of how somebody is living and coping independently, and provide information about, well, what's their nocturnal habits? Are they staying up late? Are they getting confused? And give you a real rich picture of how somebody is, so that you can make an informed decision with them on trying to help them stay at home as long as possible, but managing some of those risks with real data. Those kind of solutions are emerging in New Zealand. There will be more and more of them as we move forwards. So and with things like AI as well in the background to actually potentially do lots of the learning what is a normal routine and a normal habit, and it will just then generate alerts if things change in the house. So with Tawana Limited, I provide a whole range of solutions, from the pill dispensers that Abby showed before, and I work for Nurse Maud, introduced those solutions, and supported about 400 people with pill dispensers in Christchurch. I also do a whole range of things. Sorry.
They can help, just, you know, just to come back to that idea of the pill dispensers. They can help with reminders, but also by making sure that people don't take more than the one dose because it's not available yet. Is that right?
Absolutely. So, so if I just describe the optimum person for a pill dispenser, they generally love their pharmacist, they love their GP, and they just want to take their medication. But they sometimes forget that they have taken their medication. So at Nurse Maud, we've had numbers of referrals to give them support because they've taken 4 or 5 doses of the same medication. So the pill dispensers that we supply alert them and remind them to take the right medication at the right time, and they're locked so that they can't access more medication. The pill dispensers that we've done them for about the last 12 years. They're brilliant at supporting people to self-manage their medication, to provide them with independence, and give them that positive that they are still doing things for themselves. We generally offer them at the point of entry into Nurse Maud, so that they've got an option. It's about providing people with choices and guiding them, supporting them to make those choices, but it's still down to them whether they want to use the pill dispenser or not. You can't make somebody use a pill dispenser. They have to see the benefit for them. It has to be their choice and their control.
Yeah, fantastic. And if we were thinking about that scenario of, concern about someone leaving, what kind of talk us through some of the things that are available in terms of that kind of environmental sensing that can, and and in that kind of example, is that something we can just turn on at night so that the person doesn't need to feel that they're being monitored all day, but we can turn it on and off so that
Yeah.
it's the time that we're concerned about, we can just have a faster response, for example.
Yeah, you can have it so systems are set up so that they are just alerting between certain hours. So there are systems that Abby and ChipTech do that you can configure so that you get an alert between, say, 8 o'clock at night and 8 o'clock in the morning. Depending, again, it's configurable for the individual and the risks. So if they are getting likely to, or there's a risk that they might go to bed and wake up an hour later and think that it's still daylight and they've just got confused with the day and night and go out. Yeah, it's just about trying to configure it for that person.
Yeah, and one of the things that some of us may have heard of is the ability to have familiar voices brought into the equation.
So yeah, I do a memory reminder that you can actually program in your grandchild's voice to do the reminding within it, if you choose. So a device called the Carey Base from Abelia in Sweden, and that's a brilliant device for being able to provide people with a bit of a backup memory, help them with the routines, and you can record familiar voices within that, and just have simple pictures to prompt people to drink water or to take the medication or to remind them to do certain activities. You can even remote into it and put appointments into it. So just helping them with remembering to do things.
Yep, and there's a comment from Carolyn about I guess that idea of working out privacy versus information.
I think it's really important to have the conversation with people. Okay, I didn't put loads of sensors in my mum's house without talking with her and having an open discussion with her. And I JB's point around fluidity, things change, situations happen. My mum would not have a medical alarm in her house. She would not have any monitoring in any way. It took her to have a fall, end up on the floor, end up in hospital, and us to support her back home and to reinforce that that's what we wanted for her, because that's what she wanted. And following that, we were able to have a proactive discussion around things. She now wears an alarm around her neck and tells everybody to tell Jonathan that she's wearing her alarm. But it took that significant event to occur, and me to fly in from New Zealand to help her. So it's fluid. Have the discussions, and you're just trying to balance out maybe some privacy issues, but you're just trying to reassure family that somebody is okay. I don't look at my mum's sensors all day and all night, and there's no cameras. They just pick up movement. So it's reassuring for me, and I can do sort of caring from the other side of the world, proper remote caring.
Oh, well, thank you so much. And I love the way that we kind of end up with, both our topics with such person-centered big messages. That it's about what the person wants and needs and what supports them as an individual, and having them involved in the conversations, whether it's designing the technology, putting in the technology, choosing what's most important. So I love that everyone has just been so absolutely about the person at the center, and just I want to just say a huge thank you to everybody who has shared their stories and their passions and their amazing innovations with us today. It is just mind-blowing, and I could just the amount and depth of wonderful people we have working this area. So thank you all so much, and I know there's lots of really appreciative comments in the comments. So I have just a couple of housekeeping things to finish up. And one of those is that for some of our people who are regulars, you may have been involved in the session where we talked about the refresh of the Dementia Action Plan. And to give you a little bit of an update, that the revised action plan will be coming out the week of the 3rd and 4th of August, and that we will be sending that out to you for the opportunity to give some feedback on that. And the other is that you may know that there's a Ministry of Health evaluation of what we're doing in terms of the Dementia Network and the Dementia Leadership and Advisory Group, and that we have an online form open at the moment. Please give us feedback. Answer as few or as many questions as you like, even if it's to tell us what you'd like us to do next year for the network meetings. We'd love all your thoughts and feedback. So please do feel free to do that. And I believe that we've managed to finish at 12:01, which, given the huge amount of content we've had today, is just an absolute achievement to all our speakers. So thank you to our speakers again, and thank you to everyone who's made the time to be with us today. And we'll be back to you with all those links and ideas that have been coming up so that you can check in with them. So, ka kite anō, and thank you so much for being with us.